All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for listening in. So this is Tanessa Shears. She was actually my first mentor in personal training a couple of years back at Gold's Gym. You were working there and she hired me. It was my very first personal training job, and I've just kind of really looked up to her ever since. And yeah, so thank you for doing this and coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to help out.
Of course. So the first question I want to ask is, when did you first see yourself as a leader?
Yeah, I think that would be when I first started teaching fitness. I got designated as an aquafit instructor back in 2008, and then group fit shortly after. But I found that, you teach a class and then people start hanging around afterwards and they're like, hey, I have a question about this type of exercise. I have a question about, what about this type of food? How much water should I be drinking? And I started noticing that in that position as a fitness professional, people started looking up to me and asking me what I was doing and what has helped clients in the past and stuff like that. And so I was like, this is really neat. I think I have a way I can help people. And that's kind of when I started getting onto, Facebook and Instagram and started creating videos and content like that. Because then if I'm able to show up in a way to help other people, it actually helped my class sizes grow. So what started as like a 10-person class ended up being a full house, which was actually kind of fun. So then I was like, hey, I'm onto something here. This is a platform that I can use to help people. I'm in front of people. We're creating relationships. It was actually kind of a neat evolution.
That's so awesome. It's so interesting, the little places that we start to see like our influence on people and how that affects them and like things on a bigger scale eventually. It's really cool. It does start so small.
Totally, totally, it does.
Love it. So, what are some of the greatest challenges you've faced as a leader?
I can remember so clearly the very first time someone walked out of one of my classes because they didn't like my teaching. And I think what that being a new instructor was really hard because you take it so personally. You're like, it must be something to do with me. And it was particularly on a day where I was substituting for someone else's class. And it really, it has the ability to shake your confidence as a new instructor too, right? And I mean, when you start putting yourself out there and acting as a leader, everyone's got opinions. And even as I started moving onto social media and sharing on my platforms, people have opinions and they always like to tell you their opinions, whether they be nice or not, warranted or not. So one of the things that I had to start learning was I need to understand that their opinion is never about me. It's always about them and what they think. And that's what I always like to think of, the example of you can be the juiciest peach on the shelf, but some people still don't like peaches. And it has nothing to do with how good the peach is. It just has to do simply with the fact that some people don't like peaches. And it has nothing to do with the peach. It just has to do with that individual person's preference. And so I started learning that, like, my style of teaching, I'm loud, I'm expressive, I like fast music. This isn't going to jive for everyone. But what I started noticing is that the people that began to show up for me, I really knew that they were my people. They were in my car. These are my type of people. And the people that didn't jive with me exited. And it was great because then I knew that the community I was building was effectively on the same page as me with their goals and stuff like that. And I thought that, learning that it was never about you as the instructor or the leader, that it's about more so the individual, and learning how to separate that allowed me to continue showing up authentically and not try to show a certain face or be a certain way so that people would like me.
I love that. I think that's so important, is like kind of finding your niche and being okay with that and just being like you're right, like not everything. And I love that analogy of the peach. It's true. Like not everyone. And the first thing that popped into my head is I love juicy peaches, but I know a lot of people who like them who are like, when they're like hard like an apple. So it's, you can't argue those things. So that's great. What has contributed to your growth as a leader?
I think it's continuous education, like continuously making decisions to move myself forward, getting more coursework done, expanding my knowledge, because as a leader, our job is to deliver value, and it's to educate, and it's to help, and it's to help change the lives of other people. If I'm always staying at my current level of expertise, I'm no longer able to keep challenging these people to grow. So every year I make the point of getting a new designation, a new certification, hiring a new coach, working with someone else to help me expand my knowledge in what not only I can teach, but how I can reach more people. So I think that that's become super important, is just being relentless on reading books, watching videos, taking courses, getting coached.
I love that. I've always noticed that with you too. And it's definitely
Yeah.
been like a drive for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to do all these. There's so many things that you don't realize that you're not doing. And then you start doing them and it just changes your whole world. So
Exactly. And I also find too that when you're in the process of being deeply involved in what you're learning, I find I'm inspired myself. And I love living from that place. Like if I'm reading a book on some kind of nutrition philosophy, or if I'm learning about a certain thing, I find that I am much more adherent to the lifestyle I want to represent in my own life. So it's like staying engaged with what I teach helps me be a better leader because I'm more excited about it. I'm constantly involved in what I'm teaching, right?
I love that. Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So what are you currently doing to grow as a leader?
Yeah. Well, part of it, like I said, is the education component of it. So I think just over this lockdown where we've been at home, I've decided to get another certification as a sleep science coach. I was like, hey,
Cool.
let's use this time. So doing that, also to currently grow, adding value. So making sure that I'm learning, what do the people I'm helping really want? And constantly asking that question. And as my audience becomes more educated based on my content and more engaged, I have to continuously be asking, what do they want? What is going to help them at this stage in the journey? And most importantly, like, how can I simplify what I'm teaching to get them results faster? It's kind of like that concept of results ahead of time. It's like, I love the idea that if my community can get results off of the content that I offer, then there's such a trust factor built off of that. And then it not only helps grow the platform, but it helps grow my business too, right? Because then it creates trust. It's amazing to see it in action.
I love that. And I've heard a concept of like when you're especially, as entrepreneurs and as leaders, it's 80% of yourself and what you're doing to fill your own cup up, and 20% what you do for other people. And it just, because when your cup is filled, you can just transfer that so much more to other people.
Right. Totally. Like no one wants to work with someone who's struggling in their own life and who doesn't enjoy their own life and doesn't walk the walk, so to speak. People want to work with people that are inspired. It's a good feeling. You want to be around that kind of energy, right?
Mm-hmm. And like be around people who like are where you want to be. Stuff like that. Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the best piece of advice that you would have for someone who aspires to be an effective leader?
As a leader, it is our job to inspire people into action. If we are working with people that are not taking action, it is because we didn't inspire them. Like, even if we think about examples in our own life, anytime I've taken action, so I'm just using, for example, the last coach that I worked with personally. She put out content that inspired me, and I was like, yes, I resonate with this. I can use this. And I applied it and saw results. So I got results ahead of time. But she inspired me into action, to reaching out and be like, hey, I want to work with you. So whether we're delivering content, whether we are working one-on-one, whether we're teaching a big class, like, if we can inspire people to continue showing up, then you're not pushing people into action, you're pulling them with inspiration instead of having to rely on generating motivation all the time. So I think that is something that is an amazing quality to be able to develop.
Wow, I love that. Just simple saying. That's really good.
Definitely.
So what does it mean to add value to someone?
Yeah, I think it means to offer help or value without expectation of a return. I find it so interesting. Sometimes when you see people offering value, there's an expectation that there be a return of that value given, whether that be a new client works with me, or I get likes on my post or comments on my post. There's an expectation, I find a lot of the time, that when I put this out, I need value back. But I always like the idea of, how can I show up and inspire even if no one reads it? Because the whole point is, if we can get one person to be inspired, then we've done our job, right? Reaching one person, it's an impact. That is one person behind that. That's not just a number or a like, right? So I like the idea that putting out value into what I think my coach talks about, she calls it a value bank, and it's like a piggy bank. And we don't get to decide when that value we put out comes back to us. It might not even come back in the same form, but by constantly adding to our value bank, inspiring people, offering free workouts, saying something motivational during a class, posting something, doing a video, anything like that, where we're adding to our own value bank. Meaning the more you contribute to it, the more valuable it becomes. So when someone comes across our platforms, they're like, oh my gosh, look at all of this content, look at all of this help. I can definitely get results from that.
It's amazing. It's like the domino effect, you know, one thing affects another. And even if it's just that one person that got value from it, now they're able to deliver something meaningful to someone else.
Absolutely. And we don't know who's seeing our stuff. Like I've had clients work with me before that are like, you know, I started following you 2 years ago because you made this post that resonated with me. Like we always have to be in that mindset and not thinking about the value paying off now, but adding it for value so that we can inspire someone into action no matter how long it takes for that.
I love that. It's such a good way of thinking. And I think we need so much more of that in our world, because if we could deliver that in like so many different ways and forms from different people, like imagine what we could accomplish.
I totally agree with that.
And lastly, describe how someone has added value to you.
Yeah, well, like I said, I hired a coach about 1.5 years ago, and she's more like a business life coach. But one of the value points that I got from her is understanding that she was able to show me my thinking without, because when we live within our own minds, it's really hard to see our patterns, the way we make decisions, our thinking and stuff like that. And at the time when I hired her, I was probably about 4 months pregnant. And my brain was like, I don't know how I'm going to run my business with a baby. It's going to be so stressed out. And what she showed me, which I thought was fascinating, is she said, you're delegating your emotional responsibility to that baby. Meaning you are making it the baby's fault that you are going to be stressed out and your business is going to change and everything like this. She goes, it is never the responsibility of someone outside of you, but it is our own responsibility. If I want my business to flourish, that is on me, regardless of the circumstances. And I think being able to have someone show us our blind spots is for me, that's been one of the best ways that someone has added value to me, because that's something that I couldn't have gotten for myself, because we're always stuck viewing the world through the lens that we've created, right? So sometimes it takes someone coming in and being like, hey, this isn't actually what's happening. Would you still want to keep thinking this way? So that was huge for me. That pivot point changed the face of my business going forward. And it made my pregnancy way more enjoyable because I wasn't stressed out the whole time. It was wonderful.
That's amazing. It's so cool because there's so much about self-reflection and self-development and what we do for ourselves, but it is true. Sometimes we do need other people to show us the way, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing. To take the pressure off of ourselves sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and after that point, like I love working with someone who can show me my brain all the time. Like it's like sometimes we're sitting here going like, why isn't this working?
Yeah.
Like, why is this working? And it's something so obvious, but we just can't see it, right? It's been super helpful, that's for sure.
Awesome. Oh, I love that. And that's awesome for you. I'm so happy for your pregnancy and everything. And
Thank you.
Well, that is all of the questions I have in terms of that. So thank you so much. That was really, really, really good. And I actually learned some stuff too. I'm really happy.
I'm glad to hear. That's so fun. That's so fun.